Hi there, I'll make this quick. If you want to support this show, go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Check out the tiers, see what you can give, and we appreciate every little bit. Once again, that is patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King. My name is Cole Ross, and today I am joined once again by Zack Johnson. Hey, Zack.
Hey, Cole.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah,
it's super nice to have you. We're here to continue talking about the first part of this book, Todash. Lots of talking and lots of setup.
Yeah, we learned a tremendous amount in this section, and other than that, not a ton happens.
Right. It's one of those awkward things where it is definitely by page count equal to some of the other stuff. It's just there's not an awful lot of incident. It's just dense, I think, with a lot of details that are going to be important later, and also some funny scenes. Like Eddie gets real scared by a robot.
Yeah, that's true. But the robot saves him from a fate arguably worse than death. So.
Yes. Oh, and how your bottom would itch. Yeah.
That Andy.
No,
always a delight.
Andy, would you like your horoscope? Don't wipe with that. Yeah. So we can go ahead and get started. So last time we talked about the ka-tet's arrival at Endworld after having, progressed beyond the Emerald Palace and whatnot beforehand. We also learned about these borderlands and one particular village along the borderlands, the Calla Bryn Sturgis specifically, that happens to harbor another kind of refugee from a version of our world, one Father Callahan from Salem's Lot. And they have kind of ventured out to make an appeal to the ka-tet for protection from, a malevolent force that we're going to learn an awful lot more about here. We're going to get more details. So at the end of last section, Eddie and Jake had a very strange dream where they were in New York, but not. And it was kind of like my house and you were there, but it wasn't really you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was my grandma's house, but it was also my elementary school.
Yeah, something like that. And I kept on, I ate the world's biggest marshmallow. When I woke up, my wife had left me. Yeah, it's, so Eddie kind of, and Jake, they are anxious about this and they, talk to Roland about this. Meanwhile, Susan, who is out there squeezing frogs, she says, "Oh, I slept like a rock." And it's good that we start getting a little bit more of Susanna's, I said Susan before, that's a different person. It's good that we get a little bit more of Susanna's kind of inner world in this to a certain extent, like her conception of what is going on with her.
Yeah. And Roland is still keeping very quiet about it.
Yeah, he's got he's got the voices in his head. He's got Cord and he has Van A and all these people, kind of like giving him guidance about like, all right, they'll just cross that bridge when you get to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to burden Eddie with the fact that his wife is maybe pregnant with a demon baby. Right.
And he also doesn't want to get to this flashpoint that is absolutely going to happen later in this book, which is, Eddie wants to firmly believe that it's his, and all of that. So, we talked about this last time a little bit, but for a refresher, the Todash state, this kind of weird dream that they had, it's this kind of most sacred rite of the Manny people. They go to great lengths to induce it, and a wizard's glass will also make it happen too. That's pretty important. We're going to find out, I think, at the very end of this section, or at the very end of this chapter. What did you think of this author appeal? Another one of these. I don't know, maybe I'm sensitive to this, but when Susanna compares, how Jack Andolini and Enrico Balazar show up again here, she's like, oh yeah, it's like Dickens. Like it's always full of these coincidences. Like, what do you think of that as a move on King's part?
It gets a little weird. I mean, it you know, we learn later in the series where he's going with this, and this almost felt to me like he was having the characters sort of hash out the anxiety that he was having about deciding to go this direction with things.
Right.
The wizard's glass, they seem to send you to like very important plot relevant times and places in their weird magical dreamlike state. And you know, I think it's later in this chapter when they start talking about doing it again on purpose to try to achieve a specific aim. That felt like evidence that we're past this kind of turning point in the series, where rather than just sort of writing the parts of his magnum opus as they come to him in their own sweet time, King is like, all right, it's time to finish this. It's time to start making the plot happen rather than letting the plot happen. Yeah. And it's a little weird, you know, and I think he kind of lampshades it by saying, oh yeah, you know, people don't like these stories because they're full of coincidences. Roland says to Susanna, who is Dickens and what is a novel? That's like the most like kindergarten cop like one-liner from.
Oh, you see, one of the cities has a penis and the other city has a vagina.
It seems weird to me that this is what would come up. That like this is when this would come up. You know, like they never mentioned this before in all of the lonesome nights along the Great Road, along the path of the beam. Just nobody ever mentioned
the concept of a novel. Like,
right.
It tracks and makes a little bit of sense, right? Because like Roland knows that our world, you know, we waste paper like crazy. We literally wipe our asses with it. It seems like it would have come together a little bit, but the fact that like, oh, in a world where paper is scarce, novels wouldn't actually be a thing. Like, it's more of an oral tradition. Yeah, it's definitely just played for comedy, which is I laughed.
Yep. Nope. That's pretty good. It's just weird to think that like, you know, aspirin and sandwiches have become this running gag since like the second book of the series. But now we're like, you know what? How long have they been hanging out now? Months, if not like a year, right? And it's just nope. And I was trying to think like, how much time do I spend talking about novels as a sort of concept versus talking about aspirin and sandwiches just to people that I.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to look under the hood and see if that data is being like tracked somewhere.
Yeah. It'll be, you know, once we get to heaven and we can look back at the stats. It'll be interesting to recall this. And
it's the Alpha Protocol stat sheet. Like, I made that many orphans, Jesus. So yeah, there's also, you know, just as Susanna's outlining this, saying like, yeah, you know, in these books by this Dickens guy who was paid by the word, you know, there were a lot of coincidences. Important people just happened to show up at important times to do important things, and you just had to accept that. And Roland says anybody who calls that coincidence has never heard of ka, and that is also pretty much a direct statement. You know, whereas before ka was duty. Right, ka was, you know, this combination of both destiny and also like a thing you must do. Here, ka ends up being something that they start hand waving as like, okay, it's basically just another word for coincidence.
Yeah, just like a wizard did it. It's ka.
A wizard's glass did it. Yeah. So, in talking about that, they also start talking about Calvin Tower, and I hadn't reread this part when we talked about it last week. They specifically underline how little sense the document makes. The agreement that Calvin Tower made with Jack Sayer at Sombra that was being executed by Andolini and Balazar. To basically get paid to maybe think about selling a piece of land. Susanna rightly calls out saying like, yeah, that doesn't make sense without a topping clause. Like there's nothing there that says if somebody comes along and makes a better offer, you can't sell.
A topping clause is like that guy who shows up at your house on Christmas and puts chili on your hot dog for you.
Yeah. He's just got a bandolier of different sauces. Hey, topping, can I get some nacho cheese?
Some magic shell on this Sunday, please.
Can I get some magic shell on this hamburger?
Oh, rats! Topping clause has been drinking again.
Yeah. So, and this causes them to, well, try to get inside Calvin Tower's head. One of my favorite things about this is the much earned disdain that everybody has for Calvin Tower. We're nowhere near kind of the height of this and the height of the frustration that Calvin Tower is going to put everybody through. But they're just kind of like trying to figure out, like, okay, he's this guy who's stuck between two things. Apparently he comes from this long line of custodians of the tower, doesn't realize it, going all the way back to his days, basically to his family's days, like back in the Netherlands, Dutch Hill, et cetera, et cetera. So he's torn between that and also just being a nerd, being a guy who just kind of wants to be around books and be around people who talk like books. Not talk like books, Jesus. Talk about books.
Yeah, it's kind of, it makes me a little sad just because, like, he was such a likable dude when he appears in The Wastelands, right? And then, like, it's like, well, we need to make him a tragic character in the sense of him just having this sort of, like, I don't know, Hamlet-style flaw of being unable to, like, get over himself and make up his mind about anything.
Right.
They say that they deduce that he's the last of his line because he's not wearing a wedding ring.
Yeah.
Which that's a little bit of a, like,
that's a little mid 20th century.
Gunslinger powers of observation. Like, well, there's a lot of different. There's a lot of different options there.
Yeah, I don't know that a wife would let a married man throw that much money into that hole.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
but he's married to his books.
Yes, he is. He is married to the restaurant of the mind. So you end up feeling a little bit bad for him, but it is also pretty funny to me how much anytime the gunslingers from our world run up against somebody else who is not like them, and it reminds them of what of kind of how they used to be. I mean, Eddie is most obvious because he frames everything in terms of everything being an addiction. He's like fucking Dr. Drew.
Right.
Right. He notes at some point that, Tower is a junkie for his books.
Yeah. They, as being the last of his line who's in the process of squandering an ancestral fortune, they compare him to, the minor celebrity of the time, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to that guy?
Whatever happened to that guy? That guy who was famous for all those bankruptcies and somehow losing money on a casino. Yeah. Really weird. Just,
Yeah. Later on, Susanna still doesn't believe that Ronald Reagan was ever president. How would she feel about, like, oh, hey, noted dipshit Donald Trump?
Yeah, just like you get a fourth door opens and one of us goes in and says, "Hey, guess what? You thought Reagan was a trip?" Yeah. Well, we better stop about this before we hit our 1,000th hour. You ever get that? Like you broach something vaguely political and people say, "Oh, they talked about this for hours and hours, or 10 minutes." Yeah. Yeah. It's a bit of a bugbear of mine, but I noted that is pretty funny. But his instinct is to protect the Rose. Like, there's a reason why, even in the face of all of that money that he could get for that patch of land, millions and millions, that would let him coast on it if he invested it, he is still holding on to it. Right.
Yeah, and this is like the last. It seems like this is the last thing he has that's worth any money. He's sold everything else to keep his failing bookstore afloat. This is a little dubious as a plot point to me, because it's like, how much can it possibly cost to keep that thing going, right? Even if it's making no money at all, nobody else works there. And I guess, rent goes up over time, eats up multiple buildings worth of holdings. But sure, maybe it's way bigger. Maybe it's like a building sized warehouse full of books.
Oh yeah, he's out there running Powell's of New York. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? That actually, you're right about that. And there's also like a little bit of like convenient mysticism to it, which Blast Trilogy.txt, a bit of convenient mysticism about the fact that like, okay, the dark forces that are at work here, Calla and what have you.
Right.
Right. They can't actually do anything with the rose unless they own the land that is under it. Like, we are operating in a universe where vampires still have to be invited in to do something. Like, there is that weird contractual nature of it, but just the fact that this is the last patch is, I think Stephen King, laying on the new urgency, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it, maybe it makes some sense that Sombra can't enact their plans without being able to build a facility around the rose.
Yeah.
And they can't, it is, it's not like too hand wavy to say you're not allowed to build a giant menacing obelisk on a lot in New York City that you don't own. But
yeah, community gardens, just go in there.
Yeah. That's the thing. They could have just disguised it as like a basketball court for the neighborhood kids.
Yeah, like that community center that ended all of the universes.
Yeah. So, we wanted to put this basketball court on top of like a giant obsidian cube just so the kids would have a better view,
Yeah, and we put those big red eyes on the side just to make sure that everybody knew, hey, we're keeping an eye on this. We're watching the neighborhood. Yeah. I don't know why you're so suspicious of us. So, but yeah, the plan right now is for Sombra to build condos there, which is very funny. Just as a concern, paving paradise literally and putting up condos. So Susanna cannily proposes a plan, with her understanding of the way travel between the worlds works, says, all right, well, if we go back in time, if we go back to shortly after I disappeared, I go to our company's accountant, who is now running Holmes Dental Industry, get the money that we need for the deal, bring that back here, open up another door, go to Tower and buy the lot out from under Sombra. To which Roland says, yeah, so you guys are tripping over doors left and right. I've been wandering for 1,000 years and saw 3 of them.
Yeah, I think this is the first time that's actually revealed, where he says he's been doing this for 1,000 years.
Yes. It's been said,
which it just kind of goes by without comment, really.
Yeah. They talk about like a few pieces of that are there. Just the idea that everybody, thinks that, gunslingers are generations and generations gone, when it doesn't make sense that Roland is still alive. That word wouldn't have gotten out about that. And especially, I think in the first book, there's a lot more kind of implied softness of time that's gone here. But like the idea is, like he says, oh, I didn't experience all of that. I was like a bird who was skimming over the crests of different waves.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the first book does end with him apparently falling asleep for like hundreds of years.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And waking up having aged a decade. So it's kind of strange because it's am I wrong in saying it's still a little bit vague? Like, it has been 1,000 years, but has he been searching for 1,000 years?
Yeah, no, it's not. And I mean, it seemed a little strange to me that nobody was like, weird. They just like sort of, no, well, okay, anyway, back to our insane time travel plan.
Yeah, back to talking about aiming a door like a gun.
No.
But when they say that, guess who shows up but Donald Callahan, saying, did somebody mention aiming a door like a gun?
No.
And this is great. I love this. I love Donald Callahan. I love them meeting people from Earth.
Yep, his exchange with Eddie, when he finds out that Eddie is from a few years in the future from when he left Earth, and asks him if his baseball team has won the World Series in the meantime.
You're saying like, okay, the first thing that I need to know, not so much like, oh, like how is peace in the Middle East going? No, I need to know if the Red Sox ever won the World Series. And Eddie is super sorry. Eddie could have just lied.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep, that won it every year since he disappeared, champ. No, but Eddie tells him the truth. He says, like, yeah, they biffed a play last year. Guy's never going to live it down, et cetera, et cetera. And payment for this, Callahan just lets loose with a string of not aphorisms, but idioms, I guess.
Yeah, just a bunch of they just love hearing slang from their world and their time. So he just uses a long list of idioms, kind of non sequitur.
Yep. Guess what? You're up shit creek without a paddle, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, they're fast friends. So, and Callahan makes a little bit of the initial kind of plea for help, saying like, "Hey, I'm here with a group. Oh, you've known that we've been following you for 2 days. Well, shit, we tried really hard. We're going to ask you to do something. I need you to convince them to actually ask you to do it." Roland says, "No, that's not going to work. We can't convince you to ask us to help you. You need to ask us."
Yeah, and it gets like so much of the interactions between Roland and these people over the next couple of chapters are Roland sort of insisting that everything be bound by the ancient protocols, and then everyone just kind of acknowledging that everything that's going to happen is a foregone conclusion, no matter what anyone wants.
Yes. Even Roland himself saying like, regardless, the way of Eld is the way of duty. Like all of this, asking for aid and succor, these 3 questions, like that is a formality, but we will stand, and like probably Jaffords will stand, and whoever else is there.
Yeah, as soon as Ka reveals to us that anyone needs help, we are bound by Ka to help them.
Yeah, and this is later, but Eddie raises a good point, saying like how embarrassed will you be, if you're lying, if you're dying in a ditch somewhere and you think, oh, I blew my chance at the tower just to help some podunk town. And Roland's rejoinder to that is saying, if we don't stick to our principles, we'll die, thousands of miles before we reach the tower anyway.
Yeah, we don't deserve the tower unless we're willing to follow its rules.
Right. So that is a little bit of a subversion of the Magnificent Seven side of this too.
Yeah, because Callahan offers him the Black 13, the bend of the wizard's rainbow that he has, and Roland is like, nope. If you're a cop, you have to tell me, and you're not allowed to offer me a reward. So let's just maybe we'll take it off your hands.
Yeah,
that's also helping, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm the I'm the opposite of a witcher, and also and also, if we buy the bed frame, maybe you throw in the mattress for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, just an awful lot of kind of shucking and jiving with the contractual negotiations here. But yeah, like even that's a foregone conclusion. Roland says he's terrified of it. When he says, "Oh, I've got Black 13," it is almost an admission of just like being forsaken. Like he desperately wants this thing out from under his church. Which cool place to keep it, bro.
Yeah.
Under the floorboards of your church.
Down there in the apartment where we keep our murderer.
So as they're talking about this, and Callahan's saying like, yeah, you're going to meet these people. There's going to be a big dude. He's real rich. He thinks he runs the town, and he kind of does. His name's Overholser. Jake, he kind of flashes on that, saying, okay, wait a second. I recognize that. They rewind and go back to the interaction with Calvin, 2-3 books back, where Calvin compliments Jake Chambers' names and like, oh, it's like something from a Wayne D. Overholser book. And to kind of jog his memory, he pulls out the Charlie the Choo Choo book and notices that it is no longer written by Beryl Evans. It's not written by, Claudia Inez Bachman. There is no author information at all. I forget what this is alluding to. Do you remember why this might have happened?
I don't. It feels like the Polaroid from Back to the Future, where it is somehow reflecting something about the sort of, I don't know, the version of New York's timeline that they're currently following from.
Yeah.
Or something. But yeah, no, I don't remember how or if this ever pays off.
Right. I don't either. Like it definitely has something when we get the cabinet of books in the cave with the unfound door. There's something about the author's names in that I'm not sure if that has something to do, like when they watched Jake in Keystone Earth get that book. This is jumping ahead. This is like varsity level stuff. When he got the book from Keystone Earth, did it overwrite the books from all the other ones?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Weird, but it is treated with great import as we move on to the next chapter here, Overholser, where the negotiations with the Calla people kind of pick up. And Susanna's tasked with being kind of this invisible observer, which she laughs at.
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, these people are probably sexist, so we should be too.
Yes.
She says, oh, okay.
Yeah, just roll with the punches. This isn't great, but...
Yes, sir.
It ends up working. It ends up working a little bit. She does get a good glimpse. Before this happens, though, we learn what Susanna thinks is happening with her morning sickness, with her rumbly frog tumbly. She thinks she's got a what is it? Not hysterical pregnancy, false pregnancy.
A false pregnancy. What is that? Are we supposed to know what that is, or is this just? I mean, that's not a thing, right? Where I mean, it's like I start having morning sickness, and then my belly gets real big, but I'm not pregnant.
I've heard stories about stuff like that, but I've only ever known it to be like an urban legend. Yeah, like Susanna, she says, "Oh, I had an aunt who went through the same thing like 4 times. She swelled up big enough to be able to deliver twins." In my concept of the way the mechanism of the human body works, I don't know that that's possible.
Yeah, it's more like a cautionary tale against swallowing watermelon seeds.
Oh yeah, sorry, I started swallowing gum 7 years ago.
yeah, and I finally chewed enough gum that it's like a baby's worth of gum. It's making me real nauseated. I
carry around a real gum baby.
I'm craving weird food.
Mainly more gum.
Yep.
Oh, after they outlawed selling tapeworms to lose weight, you just go around eating gum to fill up the space. So false pregnancy, also known as a phantom, hysterical pregnancy scares, or pseudocyesis. Yeah, I guess it's a thing. Weird. I know there's also sympathetic pregnancy, like the husband or whoever's with the woman long term will get like weird pregnancy like symptoms and a sympathetic response, but I don't know. I am out of my depth here.
There was that documentary about when Arnold Schwarzenegger had a baby.
Oh yeah, Danny DeVito was there.
Similar weird circumstances.
Second Arnold Schwarzenegger's
Kindergarten Cop and Junior, but none of the greatest hits yet. Exactly.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the twins later. One of them's huge, and all the rest of them are tiny.
Oh yeah.
So, but that's what she thinks is going on, and the cause of that is she just really wants to have a baby with Eddie. And there's kind of an ominous thing here, saying more than anything else in the world, she wanted Eddie Dean's chap growing in her belly. Can't see the word chap without thinking about what's going on with her anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. Something that goes on over the course of these next couple of chapters that I want to talk about a little bit is the kind of heartwarming / sad relationship between Jake and Benny Slightman.
Yeah, Benny Slightman is the son of one of the farmers that is in the party that's sent out to meet them.
Yes. He's a little bit older than Jake, but like immediately everybody notices that like, oh, this kid's soft. Because he grew up in civilization, eating steaks with mushroom gravy over top of them and stuff. Like he's
Yeah, and his dad isn't one of the like sort of rich farmers, but he has a position of some authority working for one of them.
Yes.
So he's like middle class kid, basically.
Yeah, he's middle class, and also his anxiety over the wolves comes from the fact that even though Benny was born as a twin, his twin actually passed away, and he has no idea if that means that Benny is going to be taken by default, leaving him with nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess the party that's been sent out kind of splits the difference, right? There's the guy that only has a singleton. There's the guy that's definitely going to lose some kids, and then there's one guy that doesn't know.
Yeah. And that makes a certain amount of sense. You also have Callahan, who is a little bit more versed in all of this without even knowing that the gunslingers who are coming are from Earth.
And Callahan just seems to sort of be driven by justice in this sense, and like, you know, this it kind of it's unacceptable to just let this continue to happen.
Right. Yeah. So it's like I call the relationship sad because like at any other time, under any other circumstances, they could just be, you know, teens who went around and had fun, you know?
Yeah. And Roland reflects on that too, how he's, you know, created the situation where Jake doesn't really get to have a childhood.
Yeah.
Or turn out like Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Sucks. So we already talked about Roland believing that, it's our duty to help no matter what. They really don't like Overholser. And Overholser seems to be really fickle about this as well. They go back and forth between kind of surmounting his self-interest and also falling back into that pit where he realizes how much is at stake if they decide, you know, if they decide to fight and lose.
King does describe it, like, it seems like King goes out of his way to make Overholser at least a little bit sympathetic, though. Like, he's not just like a mustache twirling villain. Like, he keeps describing him as like not responding in the pompous way that they expected him to, and kind of humanizing. Like, they talk about him like telling a story about when he was a kid and how they notice him sort of pausing because it's difficult for him to get back into the position of being powerless and small. And none of it felt, you know, it didn't feel overly like insulting to the character to me, the way that he was portrayed here.
No.
But yeah, the ka-tet they're sort of just agreed that he's a dick.
Yeah. Well, they're like, he's being obstructionist, and they understand that his motivation is kind of, you know, self-interested, right? You know, as the rich guy, he does have a lot to lose materially, but not a lot to lose in terms of actual close relation. He even, I think, refutes that, saying, like, do you think I want to see half of the kids be taken away and brought back like, that's going to be terrible for everybody, including me. Like, they do a good job of making this complicated. I think that their frustration just kind of comes from the fact that he is a tough nut to crack, and he keeps on kind of like undoing their progress by remembering, kind of by temporarily not being charmed by their by their gunslinger diplomacy, right?
Right. Just continually reminding them this is not a foregone conclusion yet. Yeah. Although he's like clearly being subtly hypnotized by Roland's duty.
Yes. Of course, Overholser's full name adds up to 19. His middle name is Dale. Eddie does like a little trick with the information that he knows about Overholser and the author Overholser, to say like, oh, I tell people's fortunes by this. I love this line because Overholser makes like a real show of like, you know, looking at Susanna and saying, okay, I need you to tell me, is that young man trig or a fool? Tell me, I beg, for I cannot tell myself. And Susanna says a little bit of both, which is about as good of a description of Eddie's, the way he presents himself as I've seen. Yeah.
And I mean, this also kind of sets up Overholser as being sort of sharp and observant.
Yes. Yeah. Something else here, because I read that quote and I tripped over the word canna. The group starts out, by which I mean the ka-tet starts out imitating the speech of the Calla folk. Just, you know, out of, I guess, the part of that gunslinger hypnotism. But after this point, they will all be talking like they're from the Calla, saying do ya and ya and stuff like that. And that is just going to be a thing for the last 3 books.
Yeah, it's a nice touch.
Yeah. I like it. And I also fall into say thank ya and stuff like that. But yeah, they return to Overholser's camp for dinner, and Eddie is freaked out by Andy. Andy, who sneaks up behind Eddie and then tries to gaslight him into thinking, no, I wasn't sneaking at all. I was walking. Sigh. Would you like a horoscope?
Yeah, is this when they go back there, or does that? I thought that conversation happened during the poop thing.
I forget if that is the thing. He definitely, I think his reaction to seeing Andy after he comes up behind him is, "Oh, sweet Jesus." I can't recall if Eddie is just perpetually surprised by the 7-foot robot.
Yeah. It does seem like, well, yeah, that's how it seems like everyone would be reacting to this thing. Yeah. I guess Roland's seen it all, or at least read novels about it all.
What's a novel?
But, no, that robot, yeah, he's fine. What's a book? Okay, buddy.
What is it you humans call a kiss? Yeah. So they have the heartiest meal that they've had since River Crossing, but they don't talk much.
Yeah, man, that food sounded good.
Oh, yeah. This was like straight out of like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or Redwall or something, the description that they gave. The fact that they have coffee for the first time.
Yeah, sort of the first time we've seen it in Roland's world, right?
Yeah.
Because it was chicory in River Crossing.
Yes. And I think they say like between them, they down a gallon of the stuff, which why not?
Makes sense. That's why Eddie has to poop.
It primes the pump. Yeah. Let's talk about Eddie pooping, because they're like the exposition about the Callas can happen with the other exposition. Eddie goes off into the woods and he almost wipes himself with some leaves. Andy just happens to be skulking by and says, "No, don't do that. Your bottom will itch ever so much." There's also another thing. I forget when this happens, but Andy, in trying to divert everybody and, do his whole, I guess, what is it, like the demonstration mode on a clock radio is what I think he's doing with this. He says like, "Oh, how about I sing you a new song that I learned from my travels around the Callas? It has many amusing verses."
I forget what the name of this song is, but it just sounded like a song that was like, a drinking song that is vaguely concealed about dicks.
Yeah. Just very chastely ribald, probably. Or maybe just ribald itself. I don't know.
So Eddie asks, how do you know the wolves are coming? What are the wolves? Where do they come from?
Mm-hmm. What is a novel? What is a wolf?
Also, yeah, makes so. Which again, it's like, yeah, seems like someone would have done this. But it's Eddie, audience reader surrogate Eddie Dean. And the robot presses him for a password. The robot turns into bad cop.
Yes.
And asks him for a password.
Yeah, like
says he has 10 seconds to give it.
Yeah, his voice loses all affect, and Eddie tries to kind of smart talk around it, saying like, "Oh, is this like a CIA thing? Like, the roses bloom in Cairo or whatever?" and Andy, who normally would just say, "I do not understand what you're talking about. Can I recite an epic poem for you?" Just goes, "Do not understand. Would you like to retry?" Like, this is very serious because he is invoking Directive 19. Just like Andy knows how to do a bunch of things, and his only citation for why he knows stuff is his programming. When he doesn't want to say something, when something is protected, it is because of Directive 19.
And he does, I'd sort of forgotten about this, when he asks Eddie if he wants his horoscope, Eddie, for the first time of anyone in the book, says, "Yeah, why not?" And the horoscope that Andy gives him is like, "Oh, yeah, you're going to go to New York tonight and meet a dark lady."
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, okay. So that horoscope was actually just, you can see the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I remembered that, but I forgot the actual, when I was going back through the book for the notes, I couldn't find that text. So I'm happy you brought that up specifically. Yes. Andy does know things.
I don't remember if we ever find out why. But
no, so Andy has access to a bunch of stuff. He knows way, way more than he is letting on. And he is written specifically to be untrustworthy. I think it's either Susanna or Eddie who points out that, like, I know it's not possible for him to feel anything, but I swear to God, he sounds smug, and it sounds like he is taking great joy in me being uncertain about him.
Yeah, and that's a weird thing to make a robot do.
Yeah. It's like, you can have a robot that sounds pompous, right? You can have, C-3PO going around and talking down to people or what have you, but the fact that he is taking specific delight and seeming to intentionally toy with people. It's a little bit of like HAL 9000 is kind of going off the rails just a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So they learned a lot about the surrounding areas here.
Yeah, it spreads out 2,000 miles in either direction. These different towns, these Callas, each town kind of has their own thing that they either grow or raise or manufacture. It's this entire country that exists, in a thin strip of land on the border between Midworld, a world that is ending, and Endworld, a world that has ended.
And they can see Thunderclap off to the east, and it's just a big horizon-spanning storm.
Yes. I love that.
There's a Calla down south that's like Calla Vegas.
Uh-huh. It is a pleasure planet.
Yeah. But the guy who's talking about it, his wife gives him the stink eye, so he stops.
Man, those people can party. Yeah. So.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I'm not interested in that.
No, it's a thing you say. Yeah. So they also start talking about what happens to the kids when they're brought back. We've seen an example of somebody who is very thoroughly ruined, but we get more of an idea of the process. They're gone for a while after they're taken. The wolves always come at night. And they're sent back after a few weeks, I think, on trains. Nobody can discern how far they travel, but they're almost always half starved, and covered with their own mess. So it is at least long enough for them to run out of supplies.
Yeah, and the trains are just one way, and Eddie says, "Oh, well, we could figure out how many times the wolves have come by counting the ditched trains off the side of the." Like, yeah. Well, okay, yeah, that's it. Why were you the first person that occurred to?
Oh, we were just making houses out of those cars. Well, they're also really unsure. They ask just very hesitantly. Okay, so these trains, are they monorails, perhaps? But no, they're not. They're just regular old choo-choos. The Runt kids, they're completely without sex. They regress from wherever they were when they were taken. If they're lucky to ever regain the ability of speech, they're lucky to regain the ability of like bladder control or continence in general. And the real upsetting thing is that the ones who are oldest when they're taken seem to understand what they have lost.
Yeah, they lose their sexual function completely, and yeah, they're just kind of sad and angry all the time.
Yeah. Even more horrifying, the Runt people, when they reach their late teens, they hit a growth spurt where they turn into giants painfully and loudly.
Yeah, they describe one as having spent 9 days screaming as his skull grew to twice its original size.
Yeah, they talk about pressing their ear up against somebody's leg or against their skull and like hearing the creaking of the bones expanding.
And then, when they hit 30, they die of something that sounds a lot like radiation poisoning.
Yeah, like their hair turns gray and falls out. They age very, very rapidly, and it's almost like they rot from the inside.
Yeah, a lot of open sores.
Yeah. The growth spurt. I liked what they hit on. Like, okay, so you know how people teethe, when they're babies and stuff, and they scream a lot. Imagine your whole body is teething for the process of most of a year. And that's a little bit what it is. Fucked up and horrifying. Good body horror.
Yep, it's pretty rough.
Yeah. The wolves themselves, not actually wolves. This isn't like a werewolf kind of thing. They're humanoids. They wear these metal wolf masks that dissolve in the sun, so that if they are knocked over or what have you, they don't really leave a trace. So that's why nobody's ever really examined one. They ride uniformly gray horses, and they use swords made of light and throw these tracking and exploding flying drones called sneeches.
Yeah, this is the first time we see this, right?
Yeah. If that sounds familiar, put a pin in it, because you could be forgiven for thinking, oh, so they have lightsabers and things that are like the golden snitches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Roland makes a big deal about saying, really? All the horses are gray? And Overholser's like, yeah, butthole, that's what I said. And then they just move past it.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense, because they are a farming community. They've got horses. They should know how unlikely it is that 40 plus people would all be able to get uniformly gray horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Overholser's like, look, this is what we're dealing with. You guys are not going to be able to handle them, even if you are gunslingers, which I don't believe.
Right. So they say, well, how about a demonstration? Let's hold a Wild West show.
Yeah. Andy, give me some of your finest dishes.
Yes, give me your for special plates. Saying, okay, when gunslingers come by, some crockery gets busted. All right, fine, cool. I guess everybody's showing off. And what he does, he gives I forget the exact personnel, but he gives two of them the revolvers. He throws up 4 plates, and they are all shot out of midair.
He's just Jake. He says, Jake, come over here.
Oh, yes.
And Jake instinctively, because he's just trying to prove, like, look, even this kid is about to impress you with how much of a gunslinger he is. Yeah, and he just kind of signals to Jake. Jake walks over, instinctively, like, loosens his holster. And then Roland throws the plates, and Jake just instantly vaporizes them.
Yes, leaving enough shards for Eddie and Susanna to catch out of midair.
Yeah, everybody just darts around like, all right, check this out. He just blew up those plates basically all at once, and then we caught most of the pieces without me even telling them that's what we were doing.
Yeah, and Overholser says, well, there's a big difference between plates and wolves, and Roland says, it's all movement.
Yep.
It's pretty impressive. And that seems to be convincing, at least enough to continue the early stages of the engagement, saying, "Hey, what we're going to do, we can delay this decision a little bit. We're going to come to Calla Bryn Sturgis. We're going to bunk up wherever we can, and we're going to scope out the town, figure out if it's even possible to defend before we say yay or nay."
Yeah. Because they have, 4 weeks until the wolves show up, and they decide they're going to just spend a week kind of ears to the ground figuring out a plan.
Yeah, figure out if everybody's on the level, right? Get a plan, put together enough forces, convince the town to rise up in defense of itself along with them.
And they say, in a week, we'll tell you whether we think your town is defensible.
Yes.
And then later when they're talking alone, Eddie's like, what are we going to do if the town isn't defensible? And Roland's like, don't worry, bro, it is.
Yeah. What do we do if nobody fights alongside us? Well, Jaffords will do it. Maybe his wife, too.
Yeah.
So they're pretty confident about it. Eddie, meanwhile, doesn't feel like anything is right. Roland is worried that Eddie thinks that something is wrong with Susanna, but no, Eddie has more of just a omnipresent sense of derealization.
Yeah, something is wrong with everything.
Yes, everything has gone 19, and that is the only way that he can describe what he's feeling. And this is a little bit of like a summary or recovering ground of the strangeness of this world. Saying like, hey, why do people sing Hey Jude? Why does so much stuff from our world show up here? And it isn't even it isn't even just that. It is like, there are times where we're just going along, like even when we were having that meal, none of this felt real to me.
So, yeah. The only time things feel real is when he's with Susanna.
Yes. And he says, well, maybe shooting some wolves will straighten this out, because, possibly what he's reacting to is the sense that he is, being driven forward to this conflict by Ka, and he needs to rise to it.
Yeah. He's got some of that bloodlust that's part and parcel of being a gunslinger.
Yep.
Starting to chafe at him a little bit.
He's got the steel.
Demon dogs nipping at his heels.
Yeah. So they say, all right, well, we're going to go to sleep. For some reason, dessert was more muffin ball, so get ready to trip, I guess. And they resolve saying, hey, if we go Todash, we need to stick together, especially when the chimes start. Andy calls them the common chimes, not common writers, common chimes. I think that's an anime or a Sentai show. I just know that words sound like other words.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. So, and there's a pretty affecting scene here because Roland has a memory dug up by an offhanded remark. People know about the fall of Gilead. It's still a fairy tale, but Overholser straight up says, like, are we to believe that you're walking around here in Gilead that fell so long ago, you know, from these stories that we heard about the Battle of Jericho Hill and things like that? And that causes Roland to have this kind of flashback dream before he even begins to go Todash, remembering in vivid detail Cuthbert's death, you know, as he dies with an arrow in his eye, laughing about how doomed they all are.
Yeah, and this ends up with this sort of foreshadowing moment here where Cuthbert is carrying the horn of Eld.
Yes.
What do you imagine that thing looks like? Is it like a trumpet, or is it like a drinking horn? You know, like a cow horn that's been hollowed out to.
I think of it, man. I forget the name of it, but there is, like, in the Bible, there is a particular horn that is made to look like a ram's horn or something like that. It's kind of curved and made a little bit of bone, and it is specifically meant to be like blown before battle. I forget the name of it, but go ahead.
Boromir had one of those. It was always talking about Boromir winding his horn.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I think of because it is specifically of Eld. I imagine it being a little bit rustic, right? You know, being made of something else. I don't think of like the trumpet that will end the world. They even showed, what is it? When they were advertising the movie, one of the first images that they showed, like Stephen King tweeted this out, was an image of the horn with text over it that said "the second time around." Yeah.
Spoilers, buddy.
That is vague and without context.
It is, yeah. Well, it turns out when they make the movie, it's like actually a baritone saxophone. But it's huge. That's why he didn't want to carry it. It's like, no. Why this makes it really hard to fight, guys.
You know, in his bloodlust, he neglected to pick it up and play the traditional Gilead battle hymn, which is just "Careless Whisper."
Right, the theme from Night Court.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of an encore of Baker Street. But no,
Cuthbert just switches to yakety sax as they charge the oncoming army.
Oh, that is so Cuthbert.
Yeah. Anyway, so Roland has this dream about when all of his best friends died, and the dream, the flashback just kind of ends on a Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Absolutely.
Note.
Yeah.
And well, okay. I mean, he's still here having this dream, so obviously something weird must have happened.
Yeah. So he forgot to pick up the horn. That is takeaway here, but he is still having this dream. He segues right from one into another because he sees
he wakes up in New York.
He sees the great characters, the great signs saying "Don't walk." He's in a crosswalk. He is Todash. Everything is dark because of Black 13's influence here. Everybody's walking around them again, like the Matrix. Specifically, somebody who is walking around is Susanna, who is here and has her legs back.
Yeah, she's pretty excited about that.
Oh, yeah, she's dancing. It doesn't matter that she's barefoot in New York City. Roland tries to warn her, like, hey, if you step on something, it's going to, you're going to be hurt back. And if you die in the game, you die in real life, Susanna.
Right. If you step on a crack here, you break your mother's back in the real world.
Do you think this is a game? But she is undeterred. She is just so happy to have her legs back. Eddie is happy for her as well. Jake is around. Even Oi is here this time too. The whole gang is here in New York. That joy is short-lived because they find a copy of the New York Times. This is where Susanna doesn't know who Carter is and gives Eddie some friendly ribbing. about President Reagan, like that would be a thing that happens.
Right. And she still thinks that Eddie and Jake are just screwing with her because they both insist that Ronald Reagan is eventually the president.
Right. They have agreed to trick her. Yeah. But they find this paper, and notice that the date, is later than it ought to be. So it is not the same day that Jake 77 left, and went to Dutch Hill. More time has passed, kind of bringing the sinking realization that time moves about 1.5 times faster here. And when the lot is sold, they are done. So they are kind of careening toward this literally cosmic deadline of July the 15th.
That pressure is somewhat given the lie by the fact that their plan still involves also going to 1964.
Yes. It's so we might as well talk about this a little bit. The idea of Keystone Earth in this, I think it only comes in either at the end of this book or into book 6, is that there is one true Earth and multiple kind of like fake almost Earths. And that those almost Earths are where like Callahan comes from, the one that was brought into existence in Jerusalem's lot.
So they're gonna go into a fake one in the past and just bring some money back that they have to get into the real one within a fixed amount of time.
Yes. So time progresses in the Keystone Earth no matter what. It only goes one way, and you don't get more chances. But you can go to these near Earths and get basically currency or things that you need, to affect the things in Keystone Earth.
Aspirin or a pumpkin from Blimpies.
Yeah. I love that they specifically invoke Blimpie.
Yep.
Oh, the funniest named sandwich shop. I guess outside of Potbelly, but I guess that's more of just a dark reminder of what might happen. Yeah. Potbelly sandwiches out there.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and so we got to think all Potbelly sandwiches. It's okay. just like all of those sandwich places are okay.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the way that works. So it like the deadline only makes a little bit of sense when you understand that the different Earths are technically different, but one of them is true.
Yeah. But I guess we just don't understand that yet as readers, right? And that's this all just it just feels different in a way where it's like, all right, this is trying to fit a thing that needs to happen, as opposed to, the first season of Lost, when it was just, oh, this would be cool and ominous. Like, it's sort of the problem of suddenly like, crap, I'm like 75% of the way done and I need to like start tying up these loose ends.
Yeah, it's like he was over there designing mobiles and cool bird feeders and stuff like that, and realized, oh shit, I should have been using my workshop to build a clockwork machine that would accomplish something. And so now we are getting into this place where all the gears have to be fit into place, right? Like he is establishing a fixed cosmology, whereas before he had, things like the beams and the guardians and, some allusions to other stuff that he had been working on or sussing out in different novels. Here, all of the teeth have to match.
Yeah, I mean, when they are just like, oh yeah, there's just these beams that hold the world up, like, oh okay, that's cool. But then when you actually have to like write the RPG source book that explains what happens if somebody points a lightsaber at one of them, it gets a different character.
It does, yeah. Right, wrong, or whatever. It is a marked difference. It is a break in a different way for things to sprawl out.
Yeah. And I mean, I imagine that as a reader, an individual person is going to have more or less tolerance for that kind of thing. I mean, there's probably some people who are like, oh yeah, the series gets really good after the fourth book, and when it really finally starts explaining things.
And other people are going to say like, no, I feel like it definitely crushes the bunny a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, at least in my opinion, Stephen King is better at writing interesting questions than he is writing satisfying answers to those questions.
Absolutely.
And like,
absolutely,
part of it is just like the scope of the ideas that you're dealing with. That's just kind of inherent to that kind of fiction, Yes. It like invoking the mystery of a big world that you don't understand is always going to be better and more awe-inspiring than like, oh no, it was this. It's because of this bowling ball under the church.
Right.
Wait, what? Really?
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. I kind of wish I didn't know that, and they were just kind of blinking in and out of existence for no reason.
Yeah.
But okay. Yeah. It really is. You can tell at this point that there had been a little bit of a series Bible that was starting to be compiled. Like Robin Firth was putting that together alongside him, as basically putting together what would become the concordances.
What is the? I'm sorry if you've gone over this on the show before, but what was that done like for him or just?
Yeah, that was done for him. So Robin Firth, okay. I guess that she was just a really big Dark Tower fan from the early days, and around book number 4, she had just gone to work for him, kind of acting as somebody who basically like a continuity editor or continuity manager on a set, like at a movie, saying like, oh yeah, like that can't happen yet, or you can't be wearing that because XYZ. She had taken all these things and broken it out into a reference text for him to go to. There are 2 different concordances, and then one that kind of like wraps them up together. One about books 1 through 4, and the second about books 5 through 6. So like they were done in kind of 2 different phases. The one that was preparing for the writing of the final trilogy, and then the one that was done after or during the final trilogy to basically be a reference for readers as well.
All right, and to kind of probably pave the way because like at the point of the Dark Tower being written, it kind of doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
But yeah, it's weird. Like, I mean, it just sort of reads like a wiki.
Yeah. It's real interesting. Like I sleep with them like they're next to my bed on my nightstand. And I just kind of poke around thinking about like, oh yeah, I remember that person.
Yeah, it just bears out like flipping through. Like it's like a you treat it like a monster manual, not like a novel.
Yes. Yeah. It's straight up just a reference text, but really useful. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for that diversion. But,
no, that is perfectly fine. There are only a couple more details that we need to get to, including one that is really, really good. So time is moving faster. They're getting closer to the lot, and they are getting hit with these overwhelming positive memories. The proximity to the rose is giving them a sense that everything is right. Eddie is remembering, I think, going to the theater with his brother, and pretty much everybody else is just crying because, it is so warm and comforting, right?
They're all seeing the faces of people from their past in the reflections in the broken glass surrounding the rose.
Mm-hmm.
and all of the, it describes all the people that from Roland stories, and like, there's Jake's family that about, and then here's a bunch of like crazy sounding dirtbags that were in Eddie's life. like God, what a Johnny Polio, the guy with the club foot, the mad fucking Hungarian. Like, what did you?
I want that book.
Did you live in a Mad magazine? Like, what? This is
Johnny Polio's coming. Yeah, I forgot about Johnny Polio. But regardless of how great it is for Susanna, I think, to see her parents again, she has reservations about even being there. On the outside of the lot, the sign is different, has a poem that ends up being pretty important. "Oh, Susanna Mio, divided girl of mine, done parked her rig in the Dixie Pig in the year of 99.
Which is weird, right? Because the Dixie Pig is the site of some of Odetta's nonsense in the 60s.
Yes. And also, wait, I need to go back and look because I can't remember the Dixie Pig factors in her past. Like the Dixie Pig is definitely a huge part of the Song of Susanna.
I thought it was the like honky tonk that Odetta would go to when she was getting up to trouble.
Let me take a look real quick. Oh, wow. There are a bunch of restaurants called the Dixie Pig that I absolutely would not go to.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is.
Oh, maybe not. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean to like just say, actually, no, you're wrong. I just.
Oh, no. I guess I am coming to this way. Like, I read the last trilogy once when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is basically all new to me.
Yep.
Huh, okay. Well.
Yeah. It's referring to another place in New York that is going to factor in. Susanna is not thrown off by the fact that that her name is featured on this. She's more like, that's weird. It says Susanna Mio, instead of Susanna Mia. It doesn't trip anything for her for that. Additionally, earlier, Roland let slip, and called Susanna Mia by mistake, and she didn't notice that either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's really nervous. It talks about him like just freezing to see if she's going to react to it.
Yeah.
Which, like, that doesn't seem like a super Roland thing to do. Like, ooh.
Like, all of this hesitation about it doesn't seem very Roland-like at all, actually. Yeah, there's a lot of existential doubt that is brought in, that is specifically, not existential doubt, but just more hesitation than you normally would exhibit that is specifically addressed in book 7, I think. Yeah. Susanna, she decides not to go in, saying, oh, well, the broken glass is going to cut my feet. Who knows how that'll affect me when I go back when we get back to the Callas. She really just doesn't want to get near the rose because of Mia's baby. Right.
Yeah.
She could just, ride on Eddie's back. She's done it before. But this is just a ploy to not go in. So always
she's afraid of the white. Like her demon child is making her afraid of goodness.
Yes. Yeah. Roland just kind of wishes that she'd do it anyway and maybe solve 2 problems at once. See what happens. While she's out, she loses 7 minutes. She's watching a clock on a bank sign, and it goes from like 3:43 to 3:50 or something like that. And during that time, she can't account for any of it. She also lost her legs again. She just wakes up with them gone. Oya's there, unable to talk, really. Nothing else is really wrong. The bigger marked difference, though, is that things are going sideways in the world of Todash because she sees what appears to be walking corpses. We learn from Roland a little bit later that this is the vagrant dead.
Yeah, dead people who are stuck in Todash because they died too suddenly for them to be aware of it, or are like, nuh-uh, I didn't die.
Yep. I don't care how many worms are crawling in and out of my face.
And how many autopsy scars I have.
I think Eddie calls it like an autopsy tattoo or something like that.
Yeah, that was a little. I just assumed that was an idiom that I didn't know.
Yeah, same. Eddie's full of those. So yeah, Susanna meanwhile is freaking out because she says like, oh, now I feel like I understand how women who have beaten cancer feel when they go in for a routine checkup and the doctor sees a shadow on her lung. She is getting more of a hint that her joining of her different component personalities is not necessarily as complete or as permanent as she thought. She feels like she is breaking apart again. Inside the lot, there's a construction sign that has some graffiti on it. There's a slight change to the text of the sign, but it's really just a new phone number that I didn't investigate to see if it added up to 19 because it was too many numbers.
It did not.
Okay.
It was like 13 and 17 or something.
Okay. Also, we get, I think, the first appearance of our good friend Bango Skank.
Do you not see that in the Wastelands?
Oh shit! You might. I think of it as. I think of it as primarily a last trilogy thing. Bango Skank is the name of a graffiti artist who appears, whose work appears in many significant pieces of the Dark Tower series. He first appeared in one of Peter Straub's short stories, The Buffalo Hunter. It's seen in Topeka.
Okay.
Yeah, when they're in Topeka and in a New York library stall. Yeah. So we're going to see a little bit more of Bango Skank. as time goes on, and I feel like I'm tracing a minor Dark Souls character here, but just understanding where he comes from and how he gets to be so ubiquitous is so good. I'm going to save that for when we get there because it's too good to say now. Yeah.
The wiki only talks about Bango Skank being mentioned only in Song of Susanna, so that's like clearly not accurate because we have just seen him here.
Yeah. Yeah. Inside the lot, like we said, we have Bango Skank, but we also have the rose itself. And as they peer inside, to the sun that is contained within, they see a whole bunch of visions of basically positive coincidences or near misses that would have resulted in disaster. Like they see Albert Einstein almost getting hit by a car and not. Yeah. They see a German officer burning an intercepted communication about the plans for D-Day.
See some other stuff. They see 4 people rescue a kid from a monster whose head is just an eye. That's got to be from some specific other Stephen King story, right?
I can't recall. I looked through like a list of short stories trying to see if it would have matched with something. I think that they looked in on a Call of Cthulhu campaign.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. It didn't evoke anything that I've read or I'm familiar with, so I don't know. But just the idea is that the white and the rose itself, is responsible for just kind of things that almost go bad actually going right. Again, more of these coincidences, more of this ka. We're looking at these important moments as they unfold within the rose itself. And Roland kind of has this epiphany when he, sees the rose and feels its presence, that, there are 2 hubs of existence. There is the tower in his world and there is the rose here. And this kind of firms his resolve that they absolutely positively have to own this land so they can protect it, because regardless, there is a weakening, just like the tower in his world is, being eroded, just like the beams are being brought down. This itself is sick. Back in the wasteland when Jake saw or had a dream of a worm crawling in and out of the rose as a bulldozer bared down on it.
Yeah, I wonder do they ever specifically reference the poem "The Sick Rose"?
I don't know. What is the poem "The Sick Rose"?
It's a William Blake poem that I remember reading in college. It's very short. It goes, "O rose, thou art sick, the invisible worm that flies in the night and the howling storm has found out thy bed of crimson joy, and his dark secret love dost thy life destroy." So it feels like that is referencing that at least. And Stephen King definitely read William Blake, right?
Oh, 100%. And he is also...
Yeah, like a rose under attack by a worm, just like... Oh, right. There's this poem about that.
Yeah. I know that crimson is also another word for red, and roses happen to be red, but the invocation of crimson joy in this also, and dark secret love, like there's a lot that points to this. That seems like a weird punch for him to pull, especially when we start getting specific invocation of the leaf, the stone, the unfound door. In reference to writing, how that kind of becomes literalized. Like he very much does pull elements from poetry of the likes and era of Blake into this. So good pull.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was ever specifically called out, or because there's a lot of just, what is it, an epigram? Like he'll just do a lot of like a line from a poem and the head of a chapter or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't remember if I'd ever seen him do that one specifically, but like that feels like feels like an evocation.
Yeah. He'll also do song lyrics. There's a detail here because of course it has to be. There's another Rolling Stones song playing. So back in the Wastelands when Jake came here, it was playing Paint It Black. Just in the air around this. This time they are hearing 19th Nervous Breakdown because of course, Eddie says.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of this ends. The chimes start. Jake picks up something where the key used to be, the key that got him through the door in Dutch Hill. And they are ushered back to Endworld, narrowly averting being separated by, I guess, the closing of the window to Todash space. And the thing that Jake grabbed and brought back is a twinner, another version of his bowling bag from the day he left. It is a bright pink bowling bag, except instead of saying nothing but strikes at Midtown Lanes, it says nothing but strikes at Mid-World Lanes. And we are
also it's made out of some kind of mithril or something.
It is specifically it is I was about to say everything proof. It's a lot of things proof. And Roland knows exactly what is going to be housed in this bowling bag.
Yeah, and I feel like even not remembering anything about this, like the reader also has a fairly good idea.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There is another black ball that will be that will find its home nestled in that. I don't know why I said that in such a weirdly provocative way, but here we are. Yeah, and that's the chapter. That is the end of this section, Todash. Thank you, Zach. Do you have any kind of final thoughts about the stuff we talked about here?
No, not really. It just this section was very much set up, right?
Yes.
Like we're just learning a bunch of stuff, and got a couple of MacGuffins called out, and now it seems like we're ready for the actual plot to start.
Yes. The next section, Telling Tales, is going to kind of be Jerusalem. It's going to be Salem's Lot 2. Essentially, we're going to get a lot of backstory, but also we are going to learn and understand the specific ways that the town can defend itself and progress this plot to buy that land and save the second hub that we have just now learned about.
And I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of the episodes about that.
Yeah. So Zach, where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me at Zap Jackson on Twitter. They can find my video game West of Loathing at westofloathing.com or on Steam.
Yeah. And also listen to you on Video Games Hot Dog, my favorite video games podcast.
No, I always forget about that.
Yeah.
And you always remind me. Thank you.
Yeah. It is a very good show. You, Kevin, Riff, and Jim are very, very funny and insightful.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. You can find me at the other shows here on Duckfeed.tv. You can watch my horror game streams, twitch.tv/Duckfeed.tv. You know the usual stuff to do to support the shows and the network: Patreon, iTunes ratings and reviews, telling friends, etc. And on the line. Don't want to prolong this admin section. Just want to say thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time. And until then, long days and pleasant nights.